And we are back for more coverage of the last chance qualifier for the Season 5 Eternal Tournament Series. Players still alive, try and make the top 8 and eventually the top 4 and get into the Season 5 Invitational, which is next week. So up this round, we've got a pair of 3-1 players trying to stay alive in this tournament, as we've only got this round and one more round to go till we cut to top 8. So we've got Missingtoez on Elysian, a classic old school archetype here, just mid-range, big, scary stuff, and getting it out quickly and backing it up with Backlash, or if you get into a board stall, using Crystallize to break it. You've got your Cersos and False Princes and Dawnwalkers, large, overwhelming units. Sandstorm Titans, just the big efficient beater we all know and love. Same with Predatory Carnosaur, killing things. Friendly Wisp keeping, and Temple Scribe keeping the cards flowing. And Xenon Obelisk turning those little utility units into big threatening units in the mid to late game. Or if you're in a Time Mirror, giving you the advantage. On the other end, we've got Manu on Chalice Control, decided to shelve Mansu Ramp for this tournament, instead bring out good old Chalice. Notably, Manu prefers to play no Kothons in their version of Chalice Control, instead just relying on the Channel the Tempest to close it out, plus Crystalline Chalice and the full 4 Archive Curator. Also, the main deck Auric Runehammers as a nod to some of these Bartolo, Aegis, Small Flyers decks lurking around in the ETS yesterday and today. Has been serving him well so far, as he's sitting at 3-1. So we'll have to get into the action, see how these decks match up. Generally, Chalice likes to get matched up against other time mid-range decks and just grind them to dust using Harsh Rule to reset the board. But Missingtoez does have a couple of these backlashes, and the problem here is Missingtoez doesn't have a ton of evasive units, which has traditionally been Chalice's weakness, although the addition of Archive Curator and things like Islands really helped that out. So we're giving these players the go-ahead. We're going to look at the mulligans and get this action underway. And Missingtoez with the opener that you love to see. Turn 1, Initiate of the Sands. But not a whole lot of follow-up here, just an Amber Acolyte. Amber Acolyte is nice for hitting your influence requirements, but it's not the most aggressive unit. But still makes a cut here in this Elysian deck. And Manu's going to be happy to not be under too much pressure here, as, Missingtoez turn 2 play is just a 2-1. I think some players should look into certain decks and whether or not they want to be playing Amber Acolyte instead of recently buffed Avarax Familiar. That also provides power, but is a much better top deck, especially when you don't have super hard influence requirements like this Elysian deck from Missingtoez. In the meantime, though, development of power from Manu, and Missingtoez finds a False Prince, plays that down, decides to hold the Initiate of the Sands. Manu responds with Amber Acolyte of their own, just keep developing that power. And now Missingtoez gets to jam in with all these units, gets to slam down the Initiate and hold up Backlash. So Missingtoez would probably prefer to have a little more pressure on the board before they start holding up Backlash every turn, but this is the draw they have, right? Manu's then trades with the 2-1, just trying to take as little damage as possible, doesn't really care about the power the Initiate of the Sands is providing right now. Looks like Missingtoez just opted to still not play this Initiate. Just doesn't even want to bother playing it out. Manu has an Archive Curator that'll come down and silence Initiate of the Sands. But still, this False Prince is a 5/5, is out of range of this Auric Runehammer, and is just having its way with Manu right now. Although Manu will be able to play a 1/5 Deadly Lumen Defender here. And Missingtoez holding on to this friendly list has enough power that they suspect they'll be able to combo it with another card to draw cards. But this is playing out into Manu's favor. Now he's basically stabilized and has 2 Wisdom of the Elders in hand and just gets to load up here, as Missingtoez is kind of flooding a little bit here. So Wisdom comes out from Manu. I imagine Missingtoez will hold on to this Backlash. Backlash reads, use in case of harsh rules, and really nothing else in this matchup. And Manu finds a Combray Healer, and that buffs up Lumen Defender to a 1/8, so it's bigger than basically everything in Missingtoez' deck until some, a Surso or something like that shows up. But Missingtoez finds an Obelisk and can use Initiate to leap the Obelisk into 8 power. But that would still only make the False Prince a 7/7. Still not big enough to get through this Lumen Defender. So Manu has this board stabilized, now is just looking for more card advantage. Of course, has Wisdom of the Elders, found Island's Choice as well. And yeah, beats down with this 1/4 flyer. Not the fastest clock in the world, but still a clock nonetheless. Missingtoez finds a Dawnwalker. That could be a good card here, but again, this Lumen Defender is a problem for the Elysian deck. But Dawnwalker will allow this Friendly Wisp to trigger and find a Permafrost, and that's a way to deal with this Lumen Defender. And conveniently, even by using Permafrost here, can hold up Backlash. In response to the Permafrost, Manu will use Wisdom of the Elders. And then imagine it will be seeing an Island's Choice here after the attack. And it'll be up to Missingtoez of whether or not they want to backlash. Of course, actually, Island's Choice only makes this False Prince a 3/3, so this 2/2 unit still doesn't even block it. So, yeah, I mean, that it's still downgraded the False Prince. Manu will be taking less damage this turn. And I'm thinking this Desert Marshal, like, Manu could have used Desert Marshal to get rid of the Permafrost. Still, it would have been a 1/8 instead of a 1/8 Deadly, but it would have still been able to bounce off of the False Prince. Yeah, instead, Island's Choice came out there. Missingtoez has this Backlash up. Guessing Manu will try and use a Harsh Rule here after silencing the Dawnwalker. But we'll see. Maybe Manu's got other plans. Yeah, Auric Runehammer does kill everything in play. So instead, going to go with the hammer, respect the backlash possibilities anyways. And yeah, the hammer takes out that Dawnwalker, means Manu doesn't take any damage either. And now he's got a bunch of blockers for all the units from Missingtoez. Missingtoez will still jam in with these 3/3s. Offer trades wherever they can, try and unclutter this board, make room for the False Prince and Initiate that are still in hand. And yeah, Manu has a Chalice in hand. Like, taking out these small units really matters. Of course, this 1/4 will survive no matter what on Manu's side. And yeah, it looks like Manu might even chump block a 3/3 here just to be sure that the hammer survives. No, instead going with double blocks on different units to kill 2. Okay, nope, going back to the old blocks. So, chumping to save the hammer. The hammer will get a kill here. And I've got to imagine Missingtoez will, just dump the hand and hold up Backlash. So, this Initiate finally makes an appearance. And we'll see what Manu does here. If Manu tries to Harsh Rule before using hammer, that Backlash will take out the hammer. So, yep. That's what's going to go down here. Backlash counters the Harsh Rule, destroys Manu, Auric Runehammer, and Manu can get the Chalice down, not activate it here, and he's staring down a lot of damage. In fact, it's looking like lethal. No, right now Missingtoez is 1 off lethal, if I'm correct here. Let's see here. 9 plus 3. Yeah, 1 short of lethal is Missingtoez here. Of course, Manu has to give up his last Chalice target and go to 1. So still not a good spot for Manu, but hey, you can still top deck Harsh Rule or find something, but it doesn't look like that's the case. And Missingtoez takes game 1. No need for Surso, no need for Sandstorm Titan, no need for scouting parties. Just good old-fashioned Friendly Wisp, Initiate of the Sands, False Prince beat down from Missingtoez there. So now we get to go to sideboards and see how the players adjust. Missingtoez has 2 extra backlashes to bring in. Would not be shocked to see those come in at all. Permafrost can be useful. There are some extra ambush units which also help counteract the Harsh Rule cards, but at the same time, they are not as big of threats. So you've got to decide if you actually want those. On ManuS side, Vanquishes, Permafrost, all likely to come in. Don't know if anything else would. Maybe Backlash to counter their backlashes, but then you run into the problem of if it's sitting in your hand and you have no way to deal with the board because you cut a unit or a removal spell for Backlash, and that's not a great spot to be. So some decisions have to be made there. We do have a view of how Manu is sideboarding, so we can kind of take a peek at that. Yeah, we see the Vanquishes come in, sitting at 81 cards right now, so it has to make some cuts, but it's clear that Manu wants to up that removal, like spot removal count in Vanquish and Permafrost, and we'll see what ends up being the cut for that extra spot removal. Elysian is a deck that it's always fun to see when it pops up, right? It's playing some of the best threats, but doesn't have quite the utility that, say, Cambrai brings, where Cambrai has silences and things like Seraph and the Great Parliament. And, you know, we've seen a lot of Praxis lately where you've got those warp value cards and burn for reach in the late game. And Elysian doesn't have either of those. Instead, it's got some slightly more efficient units that are, you know, can have some drawbacks on them, like false prints. But Surso can be a real nightmare for a lot of decks to deal with. And Backlash, certainly a powerful card as well. I've been experimenting actually by adding Pearlescent Drake to Elysian, having just this full suite of incredibly large evasive units in Surso and Pearlescent Drake at 5. I've been rather pleased with it, and I'm interested to see if anybody else ends up bringing it at some point to an ETS or the tournament scene. But I think there's some unexplored space with Elysian now that Primal's gotten some new impressive fatties. Not only especially with the dinosaur decks, right? Elysian midrange is a bit different from a dinosaur deck, but that's also quite fun. So I've been revisiting Elysian lately and have been having a lot of fun with it. Manu's still trying to figure out exactly what to shave down on and what to keep in. Looks like at least the Channel of the Tempest is getting cut down. Maybe another one. Down to 3 chalices instead of 4. But yeah, he just wants to keep as many of these powerful spot play. Yeah, the Desert Marshal's getting cut down on, and maybe an Archive Curator or 2 will go away. Or I could even see an Auric Runehammer getting cut. Those are still in right now. They do take out some of the utility units around, but it also can't hit things like Prince, Titan, Surso, Carnosaur. It's a little awkward against Scouting Party. So maybe the Runehammer is the cut here, where it is a useful card against decks that are trying to play smaller units and then put weapons on them. Runehammer can preempt that. But it looks like those are still going to stay in. Manu seems like he's finally settled on the combination of cards that he wants for the post board, and we'll see if that ends up being enough to get him back into this matchup, as he's currently down a game to Missingtoez. So the challenge is out, it's accepted, and we are in game. Missingtoez did bring in the Rain of Frogs, so this is an interesting card. It's got high upside and a high drawback here in the matchups against certain control decks. Notably against Chalice, if you whiff, you can whiff really hard, because Chalice would actually love to play 1/1s with Destiny, because they still get to use Chalice on them. Now, still, if your Rain of Frogs hit either a Chalice or a Harsh Rule, you're pretty happy. But man, when it misses, it could miss very, very hard for you. So there is some risk at hand with bringing it in. Plus, it's one less threat in your deck. So you've got to be real careful on not only when you bring it in, but the timing of when you cast Frogs. We've seen 2 here in Missingtoez hands. Don't know if this is a hand that they'll want to keep, but it looks like it is a hand they kept. I don't know if they mulligan into it or not, but it still has 2 power plus an initiate. So if it can accelerate into a turn 3 Rain of Frogs, that can be quite potent. On ManuS side, there is no chalices in hand just yet, just to channel the Tempest, some utility cards like a Temple Scribe, which is currently uncastable, as Manu does not have double time yet. Instead, finds an Island's Favor and uses that to get an Aegis up and another source of primal. So Missingtoez also missing power, hoping to find a fourth power, but this Aegis from Island's Favor actually going to block this Rain of Frogs as well. And Missingtoez has no way to pop this Aegis on Manu's face except for back. So these Rain of Frogs are super awkward. Missingtoez does find power off of this Temple Scribe, but not exactly the most aggressive start that you were hoping for off of a turn 1 initiate this Sands. ManuS side still does not have that second time source, but Missingtoez finds a Xenon Obelisk here, and that'll be able to turn their not so imposing 1/1s into slightly more threatening 2/2. Manu on the other side has the Harsh Rule in hand, and yeah, this Island's Favor, even though it didn't provide a time source, disrupting these Rain of Frogs is large. Manu finds it, Wisdom the Elders off the top, gets to fill up their hand even more, finds a Seek Power to crucially find another time source, which will unlock this Temple Scribe to be able to be played soon. In the meantime, Missingtoez might just play Rain of Frogs to pop this Aegis. Again, the only other way that I know that Missingtoez can pop this Aegis is with a Backlash, and that's not in their hands. So yeah, Rain of Frogs, 4 costs, essentially do nothing. Not exactly what you want when you are the beat-down deck in a matchup. So Manu gets the Archive Curator down, silences the Initiate, and sets Missingtoez back to 3 power. Recognizing Missingtoez has been missing power for a while here. And yeah, Missingtoez will Permafrost that 1/4, get Manu down to 13, but Manu still has plenty of life here. And now that an extra Wisp comes down, I wouldn't be too shocked to see a Harsh Rule, but at the same time, this board's still pretty manageable from Manu's perspective. Maybe wants to be saving this Harsh Rule for bigger, scarier threats, and also finds a Chalice. So yeah, Manu's just going to put more stuff on the board, save this Harsh Rule for a bigger emergency. And Missingtoez finds a Dawnwalker. That'll be a 5/2 and provide some good pressure here. So Missingtoez hits the A space, brings in all the units, gets Manu down to 10. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that Dawnwalker comes down, triggers this Friendly Wisp, but does not find power. Does not find power just yet. Of course, that means it finds a lot more threats at the same. So yeah, by not taking out that Friendly Wisp, Manu did allow it to draw 2 extra cards. Now uses the Harsh Rule. Doesn't feel great taking out, basically the same amount of units as last time, but adding a Dawnwalker to the mix. Manu doesn't even get a Chalice out at this point, but you got to do what you got to do to stay alive, manage the board, and so that's why we saw Harsh Rule there. Missingtoez follow-up, though, is just a Temple Scribe. So Manu's got a chance to, reset, find some more cards, dig for more stuff. Amber Acolyte comes down, gets some more power out, and, uses this opportunity to develop the Chalice. And, of course, a Rain of Frogs shows up for Missingtoez right after Chalice gets played. And, that's not where you want to use Rain of Frogs. And this was the drawback I was talking about with Rain of Frogs. I mean, you had what you wanted. Turn 1 Initiate, accelerate that Rain of Frogs, disrupt your key pieces of your opponent. But now instead, these are kind of dead cards, and I think Missingtoez has to play out a threat here. Might be tempted to use a Rain and try and hit, if your opponent has a Harsh Rule, it'd be cool to snipe that. But Manu's already shown one, and I think instead, Missingtoez goes with the Surso, brings back a Dawnwalker, going to just try and keep up the pressure. Manu draws a card off this Amber Acolyte. Certainly does not find a Harsh Rule and is forced to vanquish the Surso and can leave up Island's Choice if it so desires for this Dawnwalker, but instead gets down the Temple Scribe here. Maybe in the hopes of finding a Desert Marshal. Missingtoez was really scared of Desert Marshal, could have actually pulled the trigger on Rain of Frogs, but instead wants to just keep up the pressure, force Manu to find a harsh rule, and plays down another Surso here. So Manu's got some good tools in hand. Could just slam the 1/5, gain some life, hold up Island's Choice. Could try and dig cards with either a Chalice activation or a Wisdom of the Elders. But this Surso is a big, nasty problem. Yeah, so Lumen Defender comes down, which gives Manu a little more breathing room on the life total. And, resigns himself, crosses his fingers, hopes to not see Backlash, but instead he'll see a Rain of Frogs, which he can counter with Island's Choice. But the problem is Rain of Frogs wants to take out Island's Choice here anyways, because that is the answer to Surso. So, Island's Choice will still negate it, just to hide information. But yeah, Rain of Frogs plus Permafrost is going to spell certain doom for Manu here, as this is a lot of Overwhelm coming through, plus the 2/2 on the side. This is going to be 5 Overwhelm from Surso, 2 Overwhelm from Dawnwalker, and Elysian takes this one down 2-0. So Rain of Frogs, while awkward at the start, ends up doing its job there later on in the game, taking out that removal that Manu was hoping to have, and closes the game out for Missingtoez. Large, scary units backed up by just enough disruption is good to get the job done. And Elysian moves on to the 4-1 bracket. Manu falls down to 3-2, which is going to make it pretty tough to get to the top 8. But I think there will be a couple X and 2s to make it. So if the tiebreakers go right for Manu, he could possibly still make the top 8 here. We'll have to wait and see. But great plays on both sides by the players. I don't think we have any backup matches lined up, but that's okay because we've got some other things to talk about. We've got everybody's favorite website to talk about, www.aReNGeeeternal.com. Your one-stop shop, I suppose, for all your Eternal information. We've got daily articles, ranked tier lists, stock deck lists, tourney info, all that goody. aReNGee Eternal is the community, I want to say, that runs the Eternal Tournament Series, but they do a lot else for the community as well. So check out that website. Lots of great information, lots of great articles, always good stuff. And of course, also runs this wonderful tournament, the Eternal Tournament Series. So check it out, aReNGeeeternal.com. And with that, we'll see you in the 6th and final round of Swiss, which will determine our top 8 for this last chance qualifier. We'll catch you on the other side.